Today we find ourselves drawn into a dramatic chapter in the story of King Charles III's illness, one that reveals both the unbreakable determination of the man on the throne and the fraught, very human challenges that come when duty collides with private battle. In the weeks since Buckingham Palace first disclosed that His Majesty would be receiving treatment for cancer, every public appearance has been scrutinized, every handshake and every nod paused for signs of strength or frailty. And now, just as many believed the King's health update had settled into a cautious note of reassurance, a new, and far more candid, voice has emerged to complicate the narrative. Joanna Lumley's revelations. British actress Joanna Lumley, who shares a warm personal friendship with Charles, she was made a dame by him in 2015, has described him in recent interviews as exceptionally brave, but she also issued a stark warning: he is really ill. Lumley went on to praise his indomitable spirit. He works harder than anyone I know, even now, yet she did not shy away from acknowledging the gravity of his condition. For many, this blunt honesty from someone outside the royal press operation felt like a breath of fresh air, and yet it also cut more deeply than any carefully worded palace statement ever could. Up until now, the palace had stuck to a tight script. King Charles was receiving treatment, he remained in good spirits, and he hoped that by being open about his diagnosis, he could help others facing similar struggles. No details on the type of cancer, no hints as to prognosis, only an assurance that he would continue to meet his public responsibilities, wherever possible. But Lumley's words turned that controlled message upside down. Her declaration, "He is really ill," has cast new shadows over his latest public outings, and reopened debates over whether the Crown can demand such unrelenting service from a sovereign who is quite literally fighting for his life. Pausing chemotherapy, embracing alternatives. Even more startling has been the revelation that Charles has made the extraordinary decision to pause conventional chemotherapy and embrace an alternative regimen, widely reported to include coffee enemas, daily juicing protocols, high-dose vitamin injections, and cod liver oil infusions commonly associated with the Gerson method. To mainstream oncologists, these treatments amount to a dangerous gamble. They are unproven, and in many cases can seriously weaken an already compromised patient. Yet insiders tell us that His Majesty feels compelled to try every option in this fight. Rumors swirl that he finds the harsh side effects of chemo intolerable, and that, at 76, he is determined to preserve as much quality of life as possible. Those closest to Charles have mixed views. Some applaud his willingness to step beyond the confines of standard medicine and explore any avenue that offers hope. Others warn that abandoning established protocols risks wasting precious time and energy. Queen Camilla herself, according to close friends, has pressed hard for him to return to conventional treatment, worried that the allure of alternative methods could prove a cruel distraction. And yet, Charles remains resolute. "My body, my choice," he is said to have told her. An unexpected walkabout, and a testy reception. It was against this tense backdrop that the King and Queen kicked off their most recent walkabout in the cathedral city of Bury St Edmunds. Under gentle drizzle, the couple greeted well-wishers along the Abbey gardens, Charles occasionally pausing to steady himself with Camilla's arm. Onlookers marveled at his perseverance. Though more gaunt, his signature wit remained intact. He traded jokes with a local chess club, quipped, "Good luck with that," when handed a best wishes card bound with suffragette green ribbon, and listened attentively as a fishing society leader enthused about the restoration of the local river lark. But then, just as his scheduled engagements seemed to be running smoothly, a terse voice sliced through the crowd. A man, waving a piece of crumpled paper, shouted, "Why do we pay 27 million a year from the Duchy of Lancaster for your family? It's not fair." The king stopped mid-step. He raised a gloved hand in acknowledgement and offered a single, measured yes, before nodding congenially and moving on. Seconds later, a woman cried out, "What about the 688 million annual cost to taxpayers? Can't you answer us?" Again, Charles stopped, tilted his head, exchanged a few low words with his footman, then resumed the walk, his gaze fixed firmly on the path ahead. Within hours, video of the exchange had exploded across social media. Royal defenders argued that heckling any head of state is disrespectful, publicly demanding those two should be arrested. Critics countered that the outbursts reveal genuine frustration, in a time of nationwide cost of living crisis and stretched public services. People want transparency from the Crown, just as much as from any elected body. Newspapers seized on the moment. The tabloid Sun ran the headline, "Charles copes with cost of crisis heckle," while the Times devoted an editorial to the monarchy's hidden bill, public trust at stake. A monarch torn between duty and mortality. Yet perhaps the most poignant response came from those who know him best. At Clarence House, aides confided that Charles has grown weary of the endless debate over figures and finances. He's said to feel torn between the unyielding demands of a centuries-old office, the absolute devotion to duty that my mother instilled in me, as is often reminded, and the very mortal reality of his failing body. He wants to show he can still serve, one confidant told us, but he also realizes he's running out of time. Behind the pomp, King Charles's struggle is painfully clear. The king's beloved corgis still roam the palace grounds. Gardening plans at Highgrove remain underway. But the man himself, from his slower gait to the often laboured cadence of his public address, reveals a sovereign who can no longer pretend he is simply unstoppable. He is, quite literally, human. Camilla's steadfast support, and her own frustrations. Queen Camilla has stood at his side throughout, offering encouragement, discreet nurse-like care, and public solidarity. But privately, she confesses that watching her husband wrestle with treatment decisions is agonizing. He refuses to rest, a friend reports. Refuses to listen to doctors, who warn about the risks of his chosen regimen. Sometimes I see tears in his eyes, then moments later, his greeting crowds as if nothing were wrong. At times, her own frustration has sharpened. Insiders say she urged him to resume chemotherapy after a brief pause, convinced that the real danger lies in halting evidence-based care. But Charles, ever stubborn, ever determined, has insisted that we must try it all. And so, a royal household once defined by unflappable dignity now grapples with bitter disagreements over the single most important matter, life versus legacy. The cost of transparency debate. Much of the national conversation centers on the Crown's transparency. How much should the public know about a sovereign's health? Comparisons have been drawn to previous monarchs. George VI kept his cancer diagnosis largely secret, while Queen Elizabeth II disclosed very little about her final illness. Yet today's 24/7 news cycle and global social media landscape make such reticence exponentially more difficult. Many argue that King Charles's initial pledge to share at least some details was a step forward, a monarch who honors the public's right to know, just as ministers and CEOs must. Others warn that too much disclosure risks undermining the mystique of the Crown and inviting political debate into what should remain a non-partisan institution. Looking ahead, weighty decisions on the horizon. As autumn deepens and more cloudy days set in, the King's doctors are said to be growing increasingly concerned about his unconventional regimen. Will he return to chemotherapy? Will his exploration of holistic treatments buy him critical extra months? Or will they merely allow cancer to advance unchecked? At the same time, the specter of these hecklers' questions, about financial accountability, about the cost of an ancient institution in a modern democracy, continues to echo. Can the Crown find fresh ways to justify its existence beyond tourism revenue and charity patronage? Or will those critiques continue to intensify, taxing the monarch's already limited reserves of energy and patience? A silent prayer for strength. For now, all that is certain is this: King Charles III remains committed to the role he inherited, in sickness as in health. Queen Camilla stands by him, drawing on her own resilience to shoulder the weight of public concern. Charles continues to appear when he can, at hospital visits, at military commemorations, at investitures, an aging but endlessly determined figure, bowing low to those he serves. And behind closed doors, his nearest advisors, his physicians, his children, and his crown strive to balance one question above all: how to honor an unbroken legacy while confronting the ultimate human reality, mortality. We'll continue to watch every development with care, sharing updates as soon as they arrive. In the meantime, leave your thoughts below. Do you believe the King's choice of alternative treatments is courageous or foolhardy? How much should the palace disclose about a sovereign's health? And in an era of rising cost pressures, do you think the monarchy's role can still command public support? Thank you for joining us today. If you found this deep dive illuminating, please like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss our next exploration into the rich, and sometimes turbulent, world of the British monarchy. Until next time, good health and good grace to you all.